Welcome back to the head game, where there's a game that we all play here at Mindful Athlete Training. My name is Dr. Lee Picariello.
Dr. Hunter Stevens.
Jessica.
Today, episode 49, eSports and Mental Fatigue, we are going to be discussing a healthier way to play the game, which will include the alter egos of the gamers, perception versus reality, and when in fact an esport athlete can relax and perform versus rage and collapse. That plus your fight. Let's do it. Let's do it. That's plus your 5 a.m. workout. That's what you get going with that kind of music. That's for you, man. Just for that's actually for me. So I found $20 today in my sock drawer.
Nuh-uh.
Okay.
Yep.
Just found it.
Yeah.
Why
just
doesn't
found
that
it.
happen to me?
I tell you though, is that not the greatest feeling in the world?
What have you done to make that happen in your world? Positive vibes? Did you help somebody?
Absolutely nothing. Absolutely nothing. It's not good karma. It's not coming full circle. And this is the thing. This is the odd thing. When you find the money, how do you think it's typically going to look? Thank you.
Hand in my face.
How do you think it's going to look when you find the money?
Oh.
Like the condition of the money.
It's got to be crumpled up. It's
Right.
gotta be beat up.
Oh,
Right.
I was thinking like nicely folded.
Right. Pristine.
Yeah, that's.
Crisp.
It was only folded in half. It was a brand new crisp 20.
Huh.
That how it got there in the sock drawer, don't know.
Was it on top or like hidden underneath?
It was tucked to the side. It had been flattened for a while, covered by other socks. And I was looking for a particular, and I typically don't wear socks in the summer, which is even more odd to the story. But the feeling that
Right.
you get, it's not like change in the couch feeling.
No.
You just look
It's
down.
not
It's like, is that
coins.
look at that. That's it. And I came down and I told my wife, and you know what she reminded me of? Full circle moment. She's like, oh my God. She goes, that's what we talked about the night that we met. And
It's time for a date.
And I said, what?
Yeah.
not
Yeah,
to bathe in the male stereotype. And I said, what? She said, we talked about that the night that we met. I said, we did not. And then she told the story. We met in November 19th to be exact, in the heart of Center City, Philadelphia, at the Plow and the Stars. That was the place that we met. And she wore a jacket for the first time because it was a chillier night that she hadn't worn since the last fall-winter season. And she put her hand in the pocket and pulled out a $20 bill. And I had totally forgotten that story. So was that $20 bill clean and crisp in my sock drawer almost 20 years later? $20 bill 20 years
Oh
later?
no! Don't do this to me.
To encourage the
Are
full
you
circle
saying
moment.
I should play the lottery tonight?
And your number is 2020, or reverse it. I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there.
Okay. I'll play something.
So how we doing? How we doing?
I did not find $20 in my sock drawer, so a little less great than you are.
Okay.
I found myself this morning listening to my 5:30 a.m. alarm this morning. Telling Alexa, as I normally do, to shut up in the morning because she is my alarm. And I say, Alexa, shut up. And I go to roll over to get up, and I go to close my eyes again, to get back into that sleep state.
Just for a few more moments.
Just a few more moments. But then something triggers in my head, if I don't get up now, I'm not getting up. And I know that I also have a 6 a.m. Workout, right? A workout class that I've been doing recently, a boot camp, if you will. And I know if I don't wake up now, that is not going to happen. And that's happened a lot during the quarantine, I think, for a lot of people. And so I make the choice to kind of wake up my fiance to say, okay, it's time to get up. She's like, I didn't even hear the alarm. And then later on she tells me, I did hear it. I just didn't want to get up.
Did you ever notice the space, the amount that actually goes on cognitively in a very small space, like from the time that your alarm goes off to the time you actually go up? It's almost equivalent sometimes, I think, to writing a novel. I find that those lucid moments for me are when your life is, not to be overly dramatic, is young. You haven't gotten up yet that day, so you want to remain in the present because the present is associated with rest and sleep, but yet your mind and boys and girls, this phenomenon only gets stronger the older that you get. Your mind quickly goes off into the future of what you want to accomplish that day, that week, that month, that year. It might go to a spouse, it might go to a loved one, your children, but it's action-packed in maybe sometimes 5 minutes or less. A very, very interesting phenomenon that I think that goes on. So today is episode 49. Head Game Podcast, eSports and Mental Fatigue. And this is a long time coming. This is a conversation that actually first developed 2 years ago in Phoenix when we were at the Saber Analytics Conference,
Right.
when we hooked up with someone from virtual reality, which led to a rather intense meeting in Manhattan when it used to be open. And we pitched to virtual reality mindful athlete training in all of its glory, and they very quickly said, you know, you might be onto something big time with eSports. You might want to check that out. And we kind of went, eSports.
Esports.
And that was eSports. So, where do we begin?
I guess we can talk a little bit about like what is esports. I think myself coming from more of a traditional, right? I'm going to use that word right
Well, I
now.
think we're all traditional athletes in that
Right.
regard.
I think that's important to note of what people's mindsets currently are, where we feel like our mindsets are about sports and how that landscape has shifted to the esport market and how that esport market has been changing to recognize esport athletes.
Right.
And so just talking about the market right now, and I believe it was around $900 million to $1 billion in the United States alone,
Right.
that the esport market was supposed to bring in 2019, and I believe it was supposed to grow about 50%.
By
in
50%.
2020. I don't know how that maybe has shifted
Right.
since COVID-19, but
Right.
that it's steadily growing.
Right.
And more money is invested with tens of thousands of fans, if not hundreds of millions of fans across the world.
Right. Well, I think to your point, when I think esport athlete, and truth be told, there was always a clear separation for me in how they went about playing their games. But when the upside of being entrepreneurial, at least in the confines of your mind, is you're always willing to have that next conversation. And I went up to Manhattan a couple of years ago to speak with someone in a very successful virtual reality company, not even thinking about esports. But when it was first introduced, it really gave me pause. Because as we talk about our integration effect and the relationship of those domains of human performance, they are all at a very highly concentrated level through the act of gaming. And it's not necessarily in that traditional application that an athlete needs to be calm, get focused, stay engaged, achieve integration, but it is that concentrated form in the face of chaos. Because the more that you watch gamers, I know that Jess is streaming live over there, and maybe at some point she can kind of bring that into that world, into her world, into our experience, that once all of those things start to kind of click together, we might be hearing from an esport athlete later in the show talking about how the team play evoked a lot of anxiety and he started to have physical symptoms. And I'm like, hey, dude, welcome to the party, man. Right?
Yeah, and the same notion, the same things that are elicited. And I want to move us away from traditional sports because I think esports is going to be part of that, not the mantra of sport. It is a sport. It induces stress. You are on the big stage in front of a sold-out Staples Oracle Arena with 100,000 fans surrounding you.
Right.
The pressure's there.
Right. And then you coupled with that with the streaming aspect of it.
Absolutely.
It's the argument is it's not even really an argument. It's really an established point of difference now. It's the only sport that's truly global. When you think about the nature of competition, when you think about Overwatch, when you think about how the entire world is playing the same game, they're sharing the same format, and you see more people getting behind it, more traditional psychologists are getting involved with organizations. They're trying to support those teams.
Right.
They're looking at things like team building. You're getting virtual coaches that are trying to apply more traditional mindfulness practices. It's a three-ring circus right now.
Speaking on this revenue, I pulled up the esports market for worldwide from 2018 to 2023 just to see. They hit already over $1 billion this year.
Wow.
Just to put that into
With
perspective.
everything that has happened this year.
Last year they were close to that, and they're projected to hit over, like, they're about to get like 1.6 at least billion in the U.S. by 2023. So that's not worldwide. They're saying for the U.S. alone, 1.6 billion revenue.
Right.
And I think the eventual growth is supposed to be around the 100 billion mark.
Yeah, I could.
With a B.
Right.
The amount of
you
money
mean players, like active participants?
No, there's only 7 billion people.
No. I didn't know if I misheard you or not. So.
No. Yeah, but no, just the amount of revenue, the amount of money, the amount of things that are going into it. Because the industry also, you don't just have one game, right? The top 4 games, I'm going to try to go this off my head, and you can fact check me. I believe it's League of Legends, Counter-Strike.
I don't know how
CS:GO.
I feel about just fact checking. I've been getting quite a bit of that
Counter-Strike
recently.
right now.
Counter-Strike.
That's what I'm watching.
Dota, I believe, is another one that's top 3. I'm missing I know I'm missing one.
You got a big one you got to hit. Like what the dance is.
Fortnite?
Yeah.
Fortnite's number 4?
I have to find them in order, but I just pulled it up quickly. You got Dota, which I've never heard of.
Yeah.
Counter-Strike.
Uh-huh.
I'm watching right now.
That's
Live
5v5,
tournament.
yeah.
Fortnite. League of Legends. StarCraft 2.
Okay.
Then you get Player and Overwatch and Hearthstone.
So one of the articles that I know we're going to be referring to a little bit later in our discussion is all about the eSports grind and this philosophy that I think not only is incredibly relevant to what we do, but it also allows us to speak how we can be authority in the industry.
Right.
And that's really the natural fit that, virtual reality turned us onto just a couple of years ago. When we talk about the grind and how esport athletes are embracing that, where do you think their perspective is?
Yeah, I think based on the grind, I think it's like a badge of honor for people to kind of accept the grind. It's, how long did you go today? Well, I went for 8 hours. Oh, that's cool. I streamed for 12 today. And I've actually heard that in the streams, people talking about like, ooh, big boy streamed today. We went 14 hours today of straight gaming. And that's just streaming alone. That's not even high intensity practice. That's not people going at it. That's not necessarily always professional players. It's about putting in that time, and the time in, I guess, as I think recently Ninja was saying, and I think that's his Adidas collaboration collection. Again, a gamer connecting with Adidas, an apparel company. That's a realistic thing that's happening right now.
Right. The idea of grinding, I think, speaks to the perspective of the athlete. So it might be a universal concept, but I think it becomes highly personal. When I think of the grind, I think of a personal challenge that I'm going to set for myself. I'm going to exceed that, and then, of course, compete as a natural byproduct with others. The difference in esports is because of team play and streaming simultaneously, everyone can see at the same time what you're doing, how you're doing it, the extent that you are playing, perhaps with other team members. So now it's become so much more measurable at an early stage. We have, reports where gamers as young as 22, 24 years old are done. They're burned out.
Yep.
They're tapped out. So when you think about the grind, you think about the traditional practices of psychology where we're trying to prevent burnout. Well, what's the number one intervention that we suggest to prevent burnout? In general.
Most people?
Yeah. Traditional.
Okay.
Traditional sport performance.
Like recovery, kind of step away from it for a while.
Yes, right. Which would translate into what for gamers?
Not playing.
Don't play.
Don't look at a screen.
Right.
Don't play. Close the screen, right? What do they say? When mental fatigue is high, it relates to that face time, that engagement, the very things that we are training the inhibitors of performance that we are evoking in our lab to create that chaotic environment is how they're practicing every single day.
Correct. Yeah, they're putting themselves in different situations, scenarios. They'll do a thing called Scrims, where they're kind of working against other professional players, because you can play in general lobbies, or you can team up with other teams and you actually do like scrimmages. You practice against other high quality teams to kind of get those reps to put themselves in the positions of, oh, this would be what it would be like to compete. That notion of putting themselves under challenges for extended periods of time, not just for one game, but for an extended period of hours.
Here's another thing to think about. Think about traditional sports for just a moment, because whether you like it or not, whether you're on board with the concept, eSport athletes very quickly have been thrust into the environment of traditional athletic exposure and competition. It's not an apple to comparison because it requires far less physical exertion. However, you're looking at esport athletes that are streaming 12, 14 hours a day, that are 18 years old, that have carpal tunnel, that have chronic pain issues in their wrist, in their forearm, in their elbow, in their lower back. I saw just a clip the other day where a gamer who's 18 years old, who invested in a $1,600 gaming chair. Because of the way in which it's designed for lower back support, because they're sitting all day. And let me tell you something, not to get into my piriformis story, because I've told just about anyone who will listen, I had piriformis syndrome.
What is piriformis syndrome?
Piriformis syndrome is an inflamed ass. Okay, that's a clinical term. All right, it's a band of muscles that go across the buttocks. I feel like Forrest Gump in God, I want to say Saving Private Ryan, but that's completely wrong. Forrest Gump. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. All right, I didn't work out this morning. Okay, I didn't have my 5:30 a.m. boot camp. All right, I was here grinding. It is a band that goes across the buttocks that when you don't get enough buttock exercise from sitting all day, it gets inflamed. And when it gets inflamed, it puts pressure on nerves, which radiate down the side of your leg, very analogous to sciatica. And it is excruciating to the point where sometimes I had to actually stand with my clients because I couldn't sit. It takes me about 20 minutes to drive to work. That was my threshold. That was my limit. If I got caught in traffic, I'm not lying, and my commute went from 20 minutes to 25, I was ripping into the lot and exploding out of the car door because I was in so much pain and I had to get vertical. So when you think about the nature of sitting too long, these gamers, that's their profession.
Yeah.
I'm curious as to see
professional sitters,
right? Yeah, but I'm curious to see how the standing desk concept, right, which my wife has at home. She has lower back problems. Godsend. I'm going to see the next gen of gamers. They're going to do it standing up. It's going to happen.
Yeah.
Interesting.
It's going to happen.
Yeah.
Right? They're going to create, with virtual reality, they're going to be able to play standing.
Right, the movement and stuff like that.
Absolutely.
And they're creating the infinite pads too, where you can just walk. So it's almost like a treadmill with universal laterality, being able to go in any direction. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, they're working on that now.
So you can physically move without moving.
Right now you have
it's the Wonkavator.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
It's not an elevator. Sideways,
I
backways,
still don't like that
zigways,
movie.
sideways. You don't like that? Might be a lifetime ban.
You wanna know what else I don't
right
like?
There. You don't like
just bother everyone.
You don't
today.
like the traditional Willy Wonka.
I don't. Correct. You're correct.
Why?
I don't like The Wizard of Oz. Don't you dare make me watch that. I don't want to hear anything from it because everyone knows the lines from it, and I'm like, dude.
It's okay. I'm okay more with Wizard of Oz because you might be a little frightened.
Whoa. I don't know if it can go that far.
Well, everyone is frightened of the Wizard of Oz.
Old movies freak me out. I'm not gonna lie. Like the
Sound
Wicked
of
Witch.
Music. Come on.
Dun, 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 dun,
It's okay. Safe place. It's all right.
Anyway.
That was a mini exposure.
Yeah.
Right? It's okay.
You should make me watch. We should do BioQ on me while watching The Wizard of Oz. Talk about uncomfortable.
What about I have to ask. You need to tell us. You have 2 doctors here. 2 for the price of 1. Go.
Okay. There's something about the old movie in general that freaks me out.
Is it the style?
Yeah, like the...
Because it starts black and white?
I don't like how she talks. Like, oh, no.
It kind of gets under your skin, or it frightens you?
Yes, of course, the witch. I like animals a lot, so everyone's like, oh, the flying monkeys. I'm like, no.
Flying monkeys are terrifying the first time you see them as a child. Because if you remember, they pick up the scarecrow and they pull him apart.
Oh.
Right.
They rip him to shreds.
Yeah, that's...
Flying monkeys are freaky. I'm with you on that one.
What was really maybe freaky is that when I was younger, I was growing up with all like learning about conspiracy theories, and like I know you know the conspiracy theories about the Munchkins who like committed suicide on set. I was like, I'm out on Wizard of Oz.
Right. Are we talking about the Munchkins, or are we talking specifically about the Lollipop Kids?
I don't know the difference.
Let me help you.
That's how much I
we
didn't watch.
represent the Lollipop Kids.
Is it
The Lollipop
Sugar
Kids.
Plums?
I actually hate it.
The Lollipop
I know you're not
Kids.
supposed to say that.
We would like to welcome you to Munchkin Land. Those are the Lollipop Kids.
I might walk out.
There's 3 of them.
You got the mayor. I like the mayor with
The mayor,
little curl.
The little curl.
I'm gonna watch my
The
streams.
Lollipop Kids welcome Dorothy to Munchkin Land with a lollipop.
No, I think it's the
They're welcoming.
Right.
You know?
It's okay, Jess, to be afraid. It is.
That'd be a horror movie. Put me in a VR of Wizard
Right.
of Oz. Oh my god, I'd be in there.
In the tornado.
Maybe I'll
swirling
watch it
around.
this weekend.
Toto in
Get
hand.
over my fear.
Right.
Write notes down.
Right.
I won't though.
Have you heard the Dark Side of the Moon Pink Floyd drug-related Wizard of Oz experiment?
No, should I Google it right now? I'm gonna Google it.
Please do.
Please
Let's
tell me
see.
more. You
Let-
gotta tell me.
I'm
You
gonna
can't just
figure
be
it
like,
out. Hold
no,
on.
no, because we live in 2020, and I'm going to get fact-checked, and
Right.
I don't know if my
I wanna
own...
hear
Dark
your
side of
version
it.
of it, and
You-
then get
you
it
wanna hear
fact-checked.
my
The
own-
dark side of the rainbow.
Right. You want to hear... Okay, this is Dr. Lee's version.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
And then we'll get
Okay.
the fact check.
I'm reading.
No,
it.
no fact-checking, okay?
Okay.
If you start The Wizard of Oz and turn down the volume and coincide that with Pink Floyd's Dark Side of the Moon, there is an analogous story that is told through all of the songs that can adequately, appropriately communicate. It matches well with The Wizard of Oz.
Huh.
And if you infuse that experience of Pink Floyd and The Wizard of Oz with your drug preference, apparently, reportedly, not that I've done any market research in the last 20 years, I can't speak to the age before of marriage.
Right.
That's a different conversation. It leads to quite a
Dark.
titillating experience.
I see. So you have to. There's literally directions here. Like you have to insert
go.
the CD at the exact same time, and if you do, they said it's a really interesting experience.
Interesting.
See,
Right.
I don't just not like things. I
bet
have
you-
a third eye for
I
this
bet you didn't
stuff.
think that you were going to get that one today on the head game.
No,
Yeah.
but we should pull it up.
Right.
We should watch it in the background.
That could be an entire show.
Right.
You see?
Why does that happen though? Like
We'll
there's
we'll
people,
replace
Tune
drugs
into
of
our
choice.
future live
We'll
stream.
replace drugs of choice with mimosas,
Right.
or Bloody Marys, whatever your
Should I
preference
take a
might
poll?
be.
Like, what's your drug of choice? A mindful athlete.
Well, I think the poll could be: would they be interested in sharing that experience with us in a closely more monitored clinical environment? We'll just call it that.
Right.
Right.
I have people who genuinely believe in the next in the at least decade, that the new age psychologist is going to bring someone into their office and give them some type of drug to open up their mind and actually assess them that way.
Well, that's going to
Right.
happen.
There's testing right now.
See,
for
here's
for
doctors saying,
trauma.
yeah.
There's
It's- it's-
trauma-related like NDMA testing
Yes,
right now.
I
That's
did a
going
whole
on
research on that.
with like veterans and
AKA Molly.
Ayahuasca.
right.
Ayahuasca.
Yes.
It's a tea.
And
In the
ayahuasca,
Amazon.
Yeah.
Right. Oh, the ingestion of tea, like, again, back to a youth far, far away. I feel like it's the beginning of Star Wars and the galaxy far, far
Ooh,
away.
that's, yeah.
The ingestion of mushrooms in tea is a much more palatable way to ingest that also can be tempered. When people who ingest a whole lot of mushrooms because they think it's really cool, that it's psychedelic or trippy, and they just get a huge sandwich bag of mushrooms and munch away like they're potato chips, that's dangerous.
Yes.
For sure.
A safer way to ingest that is to soak them in your preferred glass of tea and to mildly, over time, sip it.
I feel like that's such a nice way to do it.
Just saying.
Like, imagine having no shoes on,
It's about a
hairs
safe
down.
environment.
That's so you.
You're-
I'm seeing you in some French
Some-
black and white
somewhere
movie.
no one can see you.
Right.
I'm gonna pull us back a little bit from that, which I love where we went with that. But you mentioned a poll a little bit, and Jessica, I believe you had a poll posted on Mindful Athlete Training
I'm trying.
Instagram.
Yeah, I did it
So
recently.
yeah. So just tell me a little bit if there's any results on that.
So
and what you were asking.
I have been in communication with some gamers I know, just in general. And I said, hey guys, what on average a week or a day do you play video games? Like, I feel like that's an important question to start with, because then we're getting a sense of how many times these people are sitting down, like you're saying, like sitting and literally playing. And they're saying on average, it's about 10 hours for professional gamers a week. I think a week or a day. Probably a day.
Yeah.
That makes
They're
more
probably
sense.
playing like
I think
for
a
6 to
10
7
hours a
days
week. Yeah, 10 hours a week for a normal player. See, now it's different, right? Like, you have kids who I know just play. So I know streamers. Let me go off of what I know. We'll go off of my experiences. The streamers I know do not leave their little streaming room all day. I lived with 2 of them. They have one has over 2 million followers now, and one is close to 500,000. And they would, I would know when they started because I would hear their intros, and then they would stay in there all day. They would stream 3 times a day. They would have little breaks, and that's their work. Like, they make a lot of money from that. And it was really interesting because I was like, so what do you guys do? Like, what if you go on vacation? They're like, well, I record ahead of time, and they post them on vacation. They bring everything with them. So it's like it's a whole business of not just playing the game.
Right.
Like, they have things to do.
Gaming as a profession, right?
Yeah.
It's definitely not new. It's not something new, but its explosion of being a viable career, I think, is more new to what people are seeing, right?
Right.
It's no longer, you're just playing games and you're going to be rotting your brain away. Now it's, you can be making around, I think, it's around $60,000.
It's about 60,000 is the annual salary.
Average annual salary,
Correct.
right? Which means you can go upwards of that, up into the 6 figures fairly quickly.
Well, I think too,
Easily.
right? But I think too, when you think about how these athletes have gotten thrust into the limelight, and you talk about the streamers that you know that have the millions of followers and they're making a lot of money, let's just throttle it back for a moment and think about the adjustment period, if any, that they go through because they can set up shop. The beauty is that anyone can play
Yes.
if you have a computer. The downside is that everyone's playing because you have a computer. So there's no real traditional work time. You could be playing across the globe. Your concept of work-life balance, I would have to imagine, gets skewed pretty quickly.
Yeah, you're like a night owl. A lot of the streamers, they go to bed at like 5 in the morning. They wake up at like sometime during the afternoon, and they go back to it. They have a way different schedule.
Well, if you look at the secondary effects of what was happening during the COVID-19, right, is the quarantines and everybody's at home and they're working from home, the majority of them, if they're fortunate enough. And when you're working from home, now your work is your home. And that separation, right, even if it's just a commute, it's not there anymore.
No.
And in eSports, in gaming, that's always the case, except when they go to compete. And that's actually the not the norm, right? It's the unusual aspect. It's something that's different, is now I have to travel to compete for the first time.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's a whole nother aspect of it as well, just as much as being at home and not having a balance at all.
Right. And two, the more successful gamers, some of which that we've highlighted in our research in anticipation of our discussion today, they're getting their own apartments that are being set up by a sponsor, right? That are being paid for. They're getting stipends, right? That
They
help.
live in homes together. Like
Right.
Phase Up is a whole mansion in
Right, because
California.
that's because the
Phase
concept.
just got Ben Simmons, by the way.
Did they really?
Yeah.
Yeah, see?
Right,
We can't do that.
right.
We could.
I wonder-
That's the thing. We
Right.
could do it.
I wonder if Ben will have any trouble
He's pretty good.
pulling the trigger. I
Ooh.
had to say.
He's definitely not a sniper. Doesn't
Sorry.
take long shots. No.
I don't know what kind of game Ben's going to be
He's probably
paying.
playing Warzone, so yeah, you know what?
But if you think about that outlet, or you think about that other side of the personality coin, a lot of these gamers, I think, they have their I want to say call signs because I'm from the 80s and that's more indigenous of Top Gun, but it's their gaming names, right?
Oh, yeah,
Good
your
movie.
call sign. Yeah.
Right, your call sign.
Yeah,
right? What's your call sign?
Maverick,
Maverick, Goose, Slider, my personal favorite, Iceman. Just saying.
Magician.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, wasn't. It was Wizard.
Wizard?
The Wizard.
Was it?
Magician. Right. We'll get that fact checked.
Right.
For who?
Or Jester. No, there was a Jester.
All right,
If there was
Top
a
Gun
if there was a
characters.
magician, yeah.
Right. I don't think there was a magician.
Was
If-
there
I think
a magician?
I think Dr. Stevens is feeling a little overconfident because he worked out this morning. No magician. I'm going to lay that fresh, crisp, clean $20 bill down on the table right now that there is no magician in Top Gun. There, I said
The
it.
fact that I searched, is there a magician and nothing's coming up, I'm going to go with no.
Yeah. It's a safe bet.
It's like, was there magic in Tom Cruise? Like, I didn't.
Yeah, their names, their call names.
Call signs.
Right.
Right. Whether they, but how they identify with how they want to play probably has a lot to do with their call signs, their names, right? That they're selecting.
That's interesting.
Right. That's a psychological extension. It's a
As
projection.
an athlete, you're you. As
Right.
a traditional athlete,
Right.
I just thought of that. These esports gamers they're not their names. They're ninja,
Well, that's the
and
thing.
they get to step away from it.
Right.
Huh, interesting.
Technically,
They do, but what do they achieve though through that name, through that call sign? Think ninja.
like who they want to be.
Well, it's
Exactly.
in their brand,
Yeah.
right, everything that comes with it.
And I'm going to drop the mic on this one potentially. We'll see how it goes. But you and I did a show way back when on the radio where we looked at alter egos.
Yes, we did.
And I think the call sign, and for many instances for gamers, is their alter ego.
Right.
Right? The ultimate gamer wants to be a ninja. What do you think of when I say ninja?
Quick.
Yeah,
Like a cat.
stealthy, aware,
Right.
on top of their game.
Right.
Yeah.
So, quick sidebar story for me. My idea of ninja growing up was Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Michelangelo, Donatello.
Right? Okay.
Raphael.
Right. Because I didn't really
Translation.
pay much attention to the ninja identity, the ninja culture. But then, and I forget the actual title of this particular Batman, but it's the creation. I think it's Becoming Batman. It's Christian Bale. And
Batman Begins.
Batman Begins, thank you.
Yeah.
Which I think is one of the finest Batman movies.
Not the Dark Knight.
No. Where you find out after his parents are murdered and he disappears and he destroys his identity. He gives away his coat to a homeless person, throws his wallet in the fire, and then finds his way to what I want to say are of the Himalaya-like mountains, of how he goes through that particular journey.
Yeah.
And Batman is actually a ninja because he hooks up with ninjas in the
League of
mountains
Assassins, yeah,
that
Ra's al
train
Ghul.
him.
Yeah.
And I remember not knowing where that movie was going. I'm a big Christian Bale fan. That's why I'm tuning in. And I was so enthralled by the storyline of they were just making Batman a ninja, which is stealth-like, which is intelligent. It's a balance of martial arts,
Using your environment.
strength, using your environment, kind of like bending like a reed in the wind, using the will of your opponent against them. There was so much philosophy,
Yeah. They're training
psychology.
the mind a
Yes, very holistic
Yeah.
model.
Yes.
And I was fascinated by it because to me, Bruce Wayne was always the eccentric millionaire because as a child, I grew up with a Batman TV series. And there's no, obviously, backstory.
Do you remember why he failed to become
Thank
the
you for that.
assassin?
Say again?
Do you remember why he failed to become one of them?
I think he was asked to execute someone, and he refused to do that.
He had to kill Bruce Wayne.
Right.
Right. He had to kill himself in a way in order to become part of the team, part of the assassins, right?
Right.
And he held on to Gotham City.
Right.
The ideals of
he couldn't let go
what could
of
be
that.
Better. Right. And that connection to it of who he actually was. And this, throughout that entire Christopher Nolan's trilogy, if you will, is that battle between Bruce Wayne and Batman.
Yeah.
And that all starts on his ascent to that alter ego or challenge, or to become who he should be or supposed to be.
Right.
The Joker's a really interesting character to dissect too.
Yes, it is.
Have you ever seen his movie? Specific on mental health. I don't know why I didn't know.
The most recent?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I don't know why I didn't know.
Joaquin Phoenix?
Yeah.
Oh.
I'm a big like just superhero in general, Marvel, DC, whatever you prefer.
Yes.
But I didn't know like he smiles because he's so sad.
Because he's so sad.
I was like, that's so sad.
Right. But so telling.
Yes.
Right? When you think about how we project to the world the opposite of how we might be feeling. You know what that makes me think of is Robin Williams.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Right? Robin Williams was a very sad, depressed individual. He just happened to find stand-up comedy and cocaine very early in his career. Mm-hmm. But when you look at some of his most powerful work, in my opinion, I'm a huge Robin Williams fan. His most powerful roles, he's not funny at all.
Mm-hmm.
Good Morning Vietnam, when he plays Adrian Krakauer, who is a real-life character who was a disc jockey during the Vietnam era. Mm-hmm. When you think about the roles of some of these persons that we're speaking of that portray their alter, that are so not consistent with who they are, but yet it's celebrated by the world.
See what I'm pulling from this, and I think where maybe some of it is where you're heading is esport athletes and the alter name that they have and what they project onto the world isn't always what they're feeling.
Right.
Right. I'm going to just use Ninja as the example. Ninja, right? Solid, resolute, steadfast, reliable, but sometimes under pressure, right? You can feel it, but you don't want to show that.
Right.
So you hide behind that ninja aspect.
Right. It's the grind is not the badge of honor. What becomes the badge of honor is the altar.
Yeah.
It's the call sign. That's who I aspire to be. That's who I ascend to be. Mm-hmm. That's what I want to be. Mm-hmm. So it's I make jokes about this frequently. You've heard me say this. It's kind of like identifying the name of the band before you conceptualize the type of music that you want to play.
You can't do it.
Well, I disagree. I disagree.
Well, it's like
you
think about some of your coolest band names.
What, like I would name a band? Is that what
or the names of bands that you have heard,
right,
that you haven't heard a lick of what they've said. I have a band, by the way, which is indicative. When I first heard the name Pearl Jam, I was in.
I see what you're saying.
I had never heard a lick of their music.
Right.
I thought you meant as the band.
Who is that? Pearl Jam. What? Pearl Jam. Nice.
That's how I feel about Pink Floyd when you said it. Like I'll be like, oh, this is Pink Floyd.
I'm a Genesis guy.
I just did it with Rush.
Did you say Genesis? how did you become a Genesis? Like, are you a Phil Collins guy?
Yeah, big Phil Collins.
Okay, all right. So that means technically, if you were around, if you went to college in the '80s, you would have been a huge Miami Vice fan.
Oh yeah.
Because they played Into the Air at Night all the time by Phil Collins, who actually, a lot of people don't know this, did a guest appearance in a Miami Vice episode.
Interesting.
He played a salty character as well. Phil Collins.
He reminds me of, I go down the path of like Eric Clapton. Mm-hmm. And then I can go, we won't have to go there. But I get what you're saying. Right. I didn't understand it at first.
Think about the projection.
Yeah.
Think about what we're discussing as far as how you want to be perceived.
Yeah.
Right? If you're thinking about your identity first, can we make the argument that aids in performance?
Yeah, absolutely.
I would say so as well. like in a positive way though. Like you are, no matter what you like, it's who you are. So now it's not you. Like you can do things that you thought you couldn't do because it's this other.
I think
because it's not you.
It's not
I'm
you.
going to say in momentary performance it helps, but in terms of sustainability, possibly not.
Right.
Because that's straining to have to switch between the two. In the moment, it's confidence. It's
Right.
ready to go. It's locked in.
Right.
But then you go back to, I'm no longer that person, right? In your everyday life. If
I'm
you're
going to
not on
push
that main
back
stage.
slightly on your assessment. I do believe that it can help with performance in the moment, but if you can get it out in front of you, I think it can aid in sustainability.
Okay.
The first year that we went to Phoenix, I had a very specific goal in mind. It was to meet Brian Kenny from the MLB Network to get on his show MLB Now. I found him as a public speaker. I read his book. I profiled how I wanted to approach him. I stalked him just a little during the convention. I saw my window and I had a moment of hesitation. And I literally recalled which I still have in my wallet, the little small copy of a cartoon that my wife had given me right before I left for Phoenix. And it was just a picture of a door, a black and white picture of a door with a decent sized doorknob. I think I've shared this with you, Jessica. And the caption underneath says, "Not all closed doors are locked. Push." And I hesitated to go talk to Brian Kenny because he had a couple of fans that wanted him to sign their book. And I said, this isn't a good time. And I thought of that door, and it's not necessarily locked. And I walked over and I stood there awkwardly for 10 minutes waiting for him to do a, "Hey, how are you? Thanks for reading the book," signing it, a bit like a stalker, and then introduced myself, which led to him coming over. He loved our system. And 4 months later, we were on the MLB
See,
Network.
what is that? I think that we do that every day. I think it's like when you watch a movie and you're looking in the mirror and you're like, all right, you know what? We got this. Like, and you start talking to yourself. You're who are you talking to? Who is that? Like, because
Right.
it's not who you were when you woke up. You're like, I have to snap into this. Like,
I
when
think
you
it's
saw
something
that-
you're trying to elicit from yourself.
Yeah.
Which I think for the context of the gamer is the altar. And I think if you can get that more in front of you often, especially if you push that door and realize it's not locked and it leads to something successful.
Well, it's all the stuff that's you feel like is preventing you from going over there, right? That hesitation. Oh, it's going to be awkward. Oh, what if he says no? What's going to be that experience? But then you do it. You go. You
Right.
override that notion, that thought, right? That perception. And you go out there and you put yourself out there. And yeah, all that stuff could have happened. But at the same
So are
time,
you saying that's who you are, or that's an extension of your altar?
I think it's who you are. I think it's, the altar, I think, gives you that opportunity
Yes.
too.
It gives you the door, so to speak.
But that altar eventually can become a part of who you are. As well.
Totally agree with you.
And so that's what I mean. Yeah.
Right, but I think we're talking the same thing.
Right.
I think once you do it with a moderate degree of success, and it gets reinforced, now you're looking for more doors.
I think there's something else we're talking about too, and it's momentum, like the law of attraction. So once you push through that door and it works, metaphorically speaking, of course, you go and talk to somebody and it happens to work and something happens after that. Now you have this momentum of that altar person that just keeps, I feel like you keep getting better and better and growing. That's where the mental strength comes in. Like you keep pushing yourself to be the better alter ego of who you last were, maybe.
What do you think esports gamers, in terms of, you talk about mental strength, what does mental strength mean? Like, what are the areas you feel like maybe they're strong in, or that they don't necessarily have?
I think it depends on how you define mental strength, right? And how we define it is through our integration of systems, right? So it's let's make it analogous to your boot camp. It's not just upper or lower body. It's the integration of both, right?
Yeah.
So if you see one part of your game as a gamer that requires attention, you're going to allocate more time, energy, and effort in practicing that skill, which might make you a better gamer in that part of a game. It might make you a better teammate, but holistically, it's not really allowing you to reach your peak. So I think for gamers, mental fatigue has to be a huge factor. They're training for insane amounts of hours. There's also the presence of physical pain.
Michael, can you pull up a video about maybe anything with eSports and like mental health a little bit? Maybe about what that mental health looks like? Didn't mean to cut you off there.
It's okay. I was in a total flow state.
Well, while he's looking
it's shattered forever, but it's okay.
Since you're never going to get that back, while he is looking for the video, just as a side note, Michael Jackson has a little snippet on when he decided that he didn't want to be known as Michael Jackson anymore, as the kid who sang ABC, I Want You Back. He said, I am now MJ.
The kid who sang Ben.
The great kid who did these
a lot of
great
people
things.
don't know his Ben song, but that's okay.
Yeah, like there's a whole thing here where he's like, I don't want Michael Jackson anymore. I want a whole new look. I should be a new incredible actor, singer, dancer that will shock the world. I will not do interviews. I will be magic. I will be perfectionist, a researcher, a trainer. I must have the most incredible training system to dig and dig and dig until I find. I will study and look back on the whole world of entertainment and perfect it. Take the steps further to where the greatest left off. So he rewrote himself into who he wanted to be, which is everything that we were just talking about of what an alter ego is.
Right.
Can anyone do that?
I think anyone can try,
yeah.
But I think there's a certain level of skill set that very quickly needs to be revealed in that reinvention, in that rebirth. I mean, that's a very detailed resume right there of who the king of pop wanted to be before he was the king of pop. Again, Pearl Jam, the name of the band, does that suggest a high level, sound or experience? Am I drawn to it? He's customizing exactly who he wants to be with pretty significant detail. From an executive coach standpoint, that's a pretty solid model.
For sure. Because
there's no real room for misperception, right? Or lack of clarity, right? It's all right there.
Yeah. All right.
The law of attraction.
You got something for us, Ben?
Tilt originated as a poker term for a state of mental or emotional confusion or frustration in which a player adopts a less than optimal strategy, usually resulting in the player becoming over-aggressive. When someone enters the state of tilt, they have essentially lost balance of their mind and their emotions. What once was a neutral or positive state of mind has now shifted into the negative. And all decisions afterwards are less than optimal because you are starting from this negative point. There's nothing more killer to entering flow state than being in the state of tilt. I think why tilt is so common in gaming is that there are lots of triggers. Some of these affecting us more than others. Things like unfriendly or stubborn teammates, losing, bad luck and timing, bad manners from the opponent, nerves and pressure, setting expectations, overly competitive, and not achieving results. Tilt is like an invisible virus, and if you don't treat it immediately, it will spread to your entire being, and even worse, infect everyone around you.
Right. Okay. I mean, what'd you get out of that?
I quickly went to what we refer to as chaos, what they're calling tilt, which is a waterfall experience where one starts to tumble and then there's a sequence thereafter of bad things go from worse to catastrophic. It's a very common phenomenon that we address with our clients in a clinical capacity that speaks to their human performance all day long, as a professional, as a parent. When you're on tilt, I think it makes it that much more difficult for you to see the end game, and you get consumed by the moment, which is, as we all know, a distractor.
Yeah, I found interesting out of that was when performance doesn't match what you expected it to.
Yeah.
Right? I think they were talking about gambling, but like these cards to kind of hit for me. Mm-hmm. Or in gaming, I expected this to happen and it didn't.
Because I practiced, because of that sequence, right. Because of whatever we might have rehearsed.
Right, and that tilt, the complete shift of the oh crap moment, as you I think talked about a few weeks ago on the podcast about chess, right? That moment of shift for yourself, and when you don't get the results that you expect, how that shifts your entire being, as it was saying, how it throws you off, and how that puts you into that negative mind space of, what do I do?
Do you think that there's something about the nature of gaming that it can set up the players for unrealistic expectations? And what I mean by that is, let's just talk about the concept of virtual play, right? As part of anything that we might do, we imagine, we visualize mm-hmm. a level of success. Mm-hmm. We can plan and rehearse an approach. We practice, mm-hmm. Let's hope with a certain deliberate action, right? Quality reps. But yet, when our perception is that achieving the goal becomes more of a reality in what we deem everyday life, that's going to impact our effort. Does that apply in virtual play? Because the gamer knows that it's not real.
Mm-hmm.
Are you talking about the game in specific, or the?
I'm talking about the experience.
Yeah.
When you sit down and you watch someone streaming, mm-hmm. and you're watching them play. The other day I sat down and I watched a shooting game, and it was team play. Mm-hmm. Okay, and I believe it was some team from the United States versus an international team. And you see the team interplay where they're talking to each other. There's a certain level of expectations that they have, that as we rehearsed, you're going to go one way, you're going to go another, I'm going to go down the middle, you're both going to outflank.
It's the game plan.
It's gameplay, right?
It's your play in football.
Right. Is it?
Yeah.
Is it?
Yeah. It is.
Okay.
Because of the hours that they're putting in those situations, right?
Right.
So you run a certain character with a certain ability, or you run a certain weapon type, and that's your weapon type. And maybe you can use 2 or 3 of them, but you're pretty much stuck with that. And okay, what do you do when you do that? Okay, you're going to flank left. I'm going to go up high. You're going to help boost me up. I'm going to move to the right. And that's like your wide 9 I formation down the middle play.
Right.
And that's something that you run and you discuss and you work on. They do the same thing.
Yeah. For example, and we can talk about, I'm not going to say I don't know. I know you guys played video games. But one game that I played recently, I gave it as a gift to my brother who hasn't played since he was in college. Call of Duty Nazi Zombies. Basically, it's like you against the bad guys. And I sat down and we all get our controllers, and he's like, all right, look, I know exactly what to do. I know this map. We have to, 2 of them, we're going to wait until this round. 3rd round, you start moving up. Like, he had an entire game plan to execute. And I think that's kind of what and that's common, like super common. People play, they know the land. Fortnite, that's why people got so good, because they know the whole land. And they know, like, when they're landing, okay, I know where the guns are going to be, where I can go pick up this and that. Like, they become a professional in that game, which is where eSports has come. It's grown from.
I believe, and you can check on me, I believe there's a thing called an in-game leader. And that's like who you look to, to help devise.
Your mentor?
Well, no, it's who's like the point man, right? So,
okay.
So let's say you're playing a game, everybody knows the map, but you have to kind of strategize in game because of
it's like the lieutenant amongst a platoon when you're in battle.
And no, not everybody is now talking over each other as well, right? Everybody's still communicating, but you have that one person who's going to be like, this is going to be our strategy. They tend to be the most cerebral. They're not always necessarily the best, but the people who know the game really well.
More of a leadership role.
Right, and they're looked to, and they're like, okay, this is what we're going to do, or we're going to run the play. They're the quarterback, if you will, of that play, or the point guard. Mm-hmm. And that's how they strategize as part of it.
What I think is something interesting as well to mention is how when esports first came up, it's because people weren't used to watching video games, but they're like, I don't know how these kids are watching other kids play video games. And I always understood it. And then I thought, wait a second. We watch other people play basketball happily on TV. We watch baseball. Now it's just happening with esports. What is you're laughing?
I'm laughing because I think that we just kind of had a sublime moment, you and I, of sharing a bit of a brain, because that's what I meant earlier when I posed the question of, because the nature of the sport is virtual,
Okay.
is it the same application as reality? I think, I can only speak for myself personally, but then I'll take it one step further as a high-performance psychologist. When I first heard of arenas where you would watch people playing video games, I laughed.
I think everybody did.
Because my first go-to was, well, none of that is real. Yes, it's a game.
Yeah.
I understand it's a game. I understand the application of quarterback as it relates to, what was the title?
In-game leader.
The in-game leader, right? The lieutenant, right? The military, right? The brain, the leader. I get that. I understand that. But I'm taking it psychologically one step further. My response to that is, well, it's a simulation. It's not real. Gaming is entertainment. I understand that the byproduct of the Super Bowl, when it's really exciting, is grossly entertaining. But it's real. It's happening in front of me. And that's just, again, my interpretation, my perception. So I think when we watch now tens of thousands of people sitting like they're watching a basketball game in the Staples Center, and they are cheering and jumping and kind of doing the wave, and I saw some pre-game motivational things going on, which was the, what's this called that the Vikings made?
The skull?
Popular? Thank
Yeah.
you. Right? They were doing that. Some guy was all painted out in, like a...
For
Yeah,
the
they
esports.
did the 300,
black
right?
light paint, right.
They were like, gamers, what is your profession? Everyone was like, oh!
Exactly.
Yeah.
There's, right? So Dr. Stevens is getting all fired up, right? But the thing is that, and I'm not trying to split hairs here. I'm just trying to have more of that intelligent conversation about perception versus reality. I understand that them playing that game in the moment is their reality, but I think the transition piece, which the gap is, if not have already closed, is getting very, very small between real sports and
My mind
esports.
just opened up
Right.
so much.
That's what I do.
I'm just gonna put in my little mind open.
We should put on some Pink Floyd and some Wizard of Oz and give you an exposure, because now you're ready. You're ready now.
Imagine if every sport, including esports, goes into the game virtual. Now you're eliminating the football issue with concussions. You're eliminating all of these injury-prone things. That doesn't make me happy to say, but you made me think of this.
Well, no, because it is ultimately the same, I think, because you are watching people perform. You're not watching a movie. You're watching strategy unfold. You're watching attacks and counterattacks. You can play the game yourself, right? Everyone knows like that backyard football experience, or when you play actual football, or the 3-2-1 basketball as we've talked about previously, shooting hoops in the driveway. Like you've played that game, right? The game, it's a game, and then you can play Counter-Strike, you can play Fortnite, you can play League of Legends.
I think the difference, though, with the 3-2-1 backyard, I always made the shot. I don't know about you, but I would dunk because I would make it easy. I think the difference is games have gotten so much more advanced that while you can appreciate, I think you have to have an intimate knowledge of how to approach that game. The same way that I, as someone who once played football, watches a football game, I believe, very differently than the common fan. I'm more of the frustrated coordinator, where I'm trying to watch the X's and O's unfold. I don't really like to bullshit with people when they're talking during a game, I'm not the guy that you want to invite to your Super Bowl party.
Right.
It's not as if I have to be completely isolated over in the corner of the room, like, don't talk to me.
Right.
I'm not that guy.
Don't lie. You
But-
know it is.
No, I'm not. No, I'm not. I'm not. I'm not like that. I am the person, though, that once the game starts, stop talking.
Right.
I want to watch. Commercials after the play, in between, bring it. But once that play starts, and I think that's the difference for those people that were watching eSports, getting excited, right? They have more of that intimate knowledge of the game. Like, oh my God, you see what he just did? I've almost tried to do that and I couldn't.
Right.
That type of stuff,
Yeah.
I think, is exploding.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a good point. Yeah, it's why people watch other people play the game.
Yes.
People say, I don't get how you do that. It's like, he's so good. And you're like, okay, how do you know? It's like, well, because I play this and I can never do what he does.
Right.
And it's like, okay, I'm already separated from them.
So when an 18-year-old is doing that, right, and something that but now they're putting that limelight and that pressure, and they're on the big stage in front of hundreds of thousands of fans, how does that weigh on somebody to put that kind of pressure, put a six-figure
Heavily.
salary on them?
Heavily.
And
Yeah.
it's a team. So now you have to be communicating with your team.
Absolutely.
Team chemistry is really important.
And keep in mind, too, traditional sports have players' unions. They have agents. They have managers. They have people that their profession is specifically designed to tend to the needs of that athlete.
Right.
Whereas some of these younger gamers that are being deemed phenoms are getting thrust into the limelight, that are getting the shoe contracts, because they are,
Right.
and being set up in the apartments, but they're gaming 12 hours a day, that aren't receiving a whole lot of support. So now it's, what else about them other than gaming is being stretched? Their concept of resiliency, mental toughness, whether they like it or not, they've been thrust into that arena. What else?
It's got to be decision making. It has to be communication. It has to be when you don't make it, maybe depressive,
Yeah.
Aggression.
anxious.
Yeah, or managing that
Pull up that
aggression.
clip.
Right. Managing that aggression.
Aggression in esports is interesting.
Right.
That is, just as that sentence. Why, when you get angry, sometimes do you play better? Because for every other sport, when you get really emotional, you're out. Like, your body system's out of whack. Is it because you're not using all of your body systems, like all your muscles? You're sitting there like this, so now it's...
I think traditionally in sports, when you get angry, as we know, there's a physiological change, breathing, heart rate, muscle contraction. So that's going to impact the traditional athlete's ability to perform. I have to imagine some of those same principles apply.
Yeah.
There's an interesting concept because a lot of people have kind of been going at, and I'm just going to say because he's high profile, Ninja, and he was talking about how angry he gets when he loses, and the amount of work and effort that goes into it. And if you're not going for victory, if you're not looking for victory, if you're not looking for improvement, then you're wasting time. Like, he said this, and people were like, it's just a game, like, it's virtual, it doesn't matter, like, you're being a try-hard is a thing people say, and, like, they're going after him for someone who wants to better themselves and continue to challenge themselves and connects with this sport, fully and wholeheartedly. And when they do get upset, it's like, why are you getting upset? It's just a game. But that's not said to the football. It's not said to the basketball. It is in some context, but not necessarily the same in terms of how they're perceiving it.
Let me take it one step further. Is it all possible that because the most advanced gamer, regardless of the difficulty of the game, is using a mouse and a keyboard simultaneously, therefore that world does not ask physically of the player more than they can handle? When you look at other sports, when physical pain, fatigue may present itself, they will give way physically at times. Pick your sport. Why I bring that up is the perception of the gamer, because their world literally is at their fingertips. do they convince themselves that all goals are attainable? And is that unrealistic? And when they don't achieve that reality that they've convinced themselves that's attainable because it's right here, do they rage?
This is pushing into immediate feedback. Like, kids are so used to getting things immediately, including what you just said. Yes, I think the answer is yes. They do think that they can attain whatever they want to. Why? Because a 3-year-old is handed an iPad now, and they're getting immediate feedback. So I think that but is that a bad thing? I think the mind and the mind in general, the human body, is adaptable.
I think it goes back to virtual.
I don't know, because it's like when you click and you're like, I clicked first, right? So if we were going at it, right, and
I would click first, but go ahead.
And you shot me and I shot you. Okay.
Right, but there's always a way to win.
Maybe you click first, but maybe I have better aim and I headshot you. And so you click first, and I was like, I kill you.
Why you got to go to headshot, man?
Because that's total points.
Right. Maximum points. Always go for the head. And
it's a clean shot too. You're down.
Wow. At least it's painless, I guess.
Yeah, Thanos always go for the head, right? But right? So that creates this frustration of this immediate feedback loop of I should have gotten that.
Right.
So I'm going to do it again until I get it.
I still say there's an element to Dr. Lee's theory that because it's virtual, that it's more attainable in the mind. Right?
I think I finally get what you're saying.
I'm not quite there yet because I haven't had this conversation enough, but we will. We'll continue to have it. When I think of my own children and their experience with video games, we were very conservative of when they first got their gaming system, what games they could play, how long they could play. Mm-hmm. Okay? I can count on 2 hands with my son. My daughter has never showed any interest in video games. She's more of a YouTuber. I can count on 2 hands the number of times where I had to remove the gaming system from my son for what I would deem small rage moments. He wasn't breaking anything, but he was using language that he knew wasn't permitted in the household, and he was becoming a disruption. And it was after 3 attempts per dad sitting him down saying, you need to learn to control yourself. You need to learn to put it in perspective. But yet every now and then when I would hear him unravel, it was because this is, again, my parental perception. He felt he should have been able to do what he didn't. And his most significant, and I use the word rage loosely for the context of this confirmation, rage moments that he had were when he had failed at something that he had previously achieved. And I think there's a difference between that and what we'll just call traditional sports.
Do you think, though?
AKA
I don't know.
I think I get what you're saying.
I do.
I think I get it 100%.
I don't know. I feel like when you get, because you, like, let's
agree.
say you're playing quarterback and you throw an interception. And you can see this at even the elite level. They get pissed off. They get angry. Like Tom Brady throwing stuff, right? Odell Beckham Jr. slapping the kicking thing and hitting him back in his face. Like, this happens in traditional sports, too, this rage moment, if we're calling it.
Right, it does.
But I think I'm happy. I think I'm on the same wavelength now. But for a quarterback, there takes a lot of skill.
But there's a skill in eSports.
Right, but eSports, to Dr. Lee's point, it's this. You can beat Ninja because anybody has the opportunity to do that. You can't be Odell Beckham Jr. because that is now nature versus nurture type talk.
Well, it's just for the simplicity of the point, it's just what I'm calling reality versus virtual. Let's call it more tangible. That's what I brought up earlier about the physical nature of pain and endurance. Yes, there are moments of it for the gamer, but when you get to traditional sports where we're physically engaging, And because you worked much harder in the off season that you're going to eventually kick my ass.
It's the same thing in eSports.
It is, but I'm talking. I'm tying it back to the emotional element.
Well, emotions are huge.
I think there's a greater level of acceptance in what we'll call reality-based performance of physical skills. I can get my mind wrapped around your dominance. Because you're bigger, you're stronger, you're faster. And oh, by the way, I heard and now have witnessed firsthand that you just work harder.
Right.
Therefore, my acceptance, my anger, my rage is not as severe. But if I both know that all we've been doing is this for 14 hours a day for 4 years, why is I can't beat him?
Yeah, no longer is
the
it.
same thing happened.
I think there's a different chip that's getting activated.
I would say like
same premise.
If I see Ninja,
same premise.
If I see Ninja in my lobby, I'm shitting myself, right? Because it's like I have to go play against someone who I know is going to be superior in ability.
So what are the intangible things that you're looking at? I'm gonna dive into your side of the equation now, since I already understand his, but I get where you're at. So like, are you saying, one, obviously he's put in so much time, but also, he is better than a lot of people. Why?
I'm the one who dunks
better?
in the.
Yeah, like he's not.
I'm just saying.
It doesn't matter his height.
Don't forget
weight.
that
scenario.
Yeah.
Virtually,
yeah.
I'm a dunker.
Right. So you're talking
Headshot.
about certain visual limits, physical.
I'm still smarting from the headshot.
Well, I think what it opens up
that.
is you don't necessarily have to have a physical. There's definitely physical elements of it. Like people with no arms and no legs can play video games at a very high level. People who are deaf can play video games at a very high level. Like you don't need certain maybe physical attributes that will get you there. And
you're strengthening my point.
No, because you're saying it's the cognitive realm is ever more important in that space, which then
I'm saying because all people can do it. Because the execution literally.
Just because all people can do it though. Everyone can play a sport. Like not everyone can play a sport, but almost everyone can play a sport. But not everyone can get to the high level.
I think there's more of a diffusion.
I don't think so. I think
let me add in
I think
here.
if you're at the top of a League of Legends round, there's 100 million. Let's say there's 5 million players playing it.
100 million.
But yeah, let's say 100 million, right? Only maybe 500 of them are getting to the top level who are making six figures, which is the exact same parameters as you would in the NBA.
I would be curious to see if there are numbers out there. Like, I remember growing up playing high school football that, for every 100,000...
there is.
For every 100,000 football players that play high school, only 1,000 go on to college, and from 1,000 college players, only one becomes a pro, or some ridiculous statistic like that. Are there stats out there like that?
I think there is. There's stats for everything now, including esports. But to jump back, because I think this is an interesting conversation, I think in Hunter's perspective, are you saying, and you can correct me if I'm wrong because it's your perspective, are you saying like the intangible things are the mind? Like Ninja could be better than somebody else because he naturally pushes himself harder than the next person mentally. I'm trying to figure out the intangible. Like I get why someone
can put in 1,000 hours of time and still suck, like myself.
Right. So what makes someone better than the other? Which would make.
Well, it's what they're working on. Do you have intentionality? Are you?
It's raw skills.
Are you shying away from fights? Right. Or are you going into it?
It's
right?
how you practice.
So in a battle royale setting, right? 100 players drop in, and only one player wins if it's the solo mode, right? Only one player is going to win. And there's multiple strategies that you can do that. And some strategies are I'm going to hide in a bush until it's just me and that other person, and I'm going to rocket launcher.
I've done it.
And I'm going to rocket launcher that person.
Right.
Right? And you can win that game.
Yeah.
Right? Or it's
the Hunger Games approach, right? Where you just hide until everyone else is gone. Or you go out
and you kill 14 people and you win the game, right? But then when you get to the elite level and you're playing against those people, everyone has to compete. And it's a completely different game when you're competing against high-level people than you would just a normal person. The game completely switches to more strategic, more alignments. You have to, again, counterattacks. You have to be more strategic of shield, health, how you manage all that.
See, but I'm not.
It's your worst nightmare.
I'm not disagreeing with any of that. You're sort of laundry listing all of the things that are consistent with that higher order level of play.
Right.
Back to what I think, Jess, you started all of this with your why do people rage?
I think I finally
for
have
the emotional element. Here's a simple question that I have for you. You ready? Because I'm the one who's dunking virtually. All right.
Yeah.
You get your arms up. How much you're covering with your hands up. It doesn't matter, brother. Because I'm screaming over the top with my 360 behind the back tomahawk jam. Here it comes. Can there ever be a healthier way to play?
What are you considering not healthy right now? Aggression?
Rage.
But aggression is such an identity with sports.
I think what it might
be an identity.
Well, I think the stress.
It's not beneficial long term.
Well, I think the stress to perform that people put on themselves, I think, is unhealthy in a sense, right? I think
general.
I think the pressure, right? If the average expectancy of burnout in esports is 24 years old, there's something that's unhealthy about it.
Absolutely.
Right, and there's I think the more that people are investing time, research, energy, being thoughtful about the process, I think that will then allow people to ascend to a higher level. So there'll be more people with a positive mindset around gaming, right? There'll be more accepting culture. There'll be more physical and mental strength positions, I think, for esports, because those elements are necessary if you have a high caliber player and you want them to last for 10 years.
The primary philosophy in esports right now is play harder, play longer equates to better. And we know for a fact that in traditional sports, that's not true.
Right.
So if esports ever has a chance to get to that level of acceptance, and that's what they want, and that's where they're going, and that's sure as hell how they're acting, you've got to look at a healthier way to play.
Right, if you're going to be playing. Yeah.
If you're going to be playing, to speak to your statistic earlier, if you're done at 24, that's even shorter than a professional football running back career, which is 3.2 years.
I'm getting that statistic from a CBS article. The name of that is escaping me right now.
It's the esports players burn out young as the grind takes mental, physical tolls. It's on CBS, but their sports network.
Okay, right, it's CBS News. It's the online affiliate of CBSNews.com. But to speak to that article, there's a gentleman named Steve Cohen, and he's the chief strategic officer of AEG, which is the largest global sports conglomerate. They have their hands on ownership in 43 pro sports teams. During that CBS News interview, he goes on record to talk about how, and I want to get your comments on this because I think this is a great way to kind of bring it up to the crescendo, because Hunter's still smarting from that dunk that I just kind of I took over the top on him. When you talk about the esports athlete and their lifespan, he says that it's not this generation, but it's the second gen gamer that's going to tell the tale of how long they can play, the right way to play, and the impact that it has on this billion-dollar industry. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think with the advancement, with the investment, I guess, of time, if people are doing it like responsibly in terms of building a product, I think it's important to make sure you're thinking about the well-being and wellness of the player just as much as the sled dog approach where you just go until they fall apart. The
biggest concern that Steve Cohen had is that the esports industry would be so drawn to what he refers to as hot money, is that they would scale up without being responsible. And I think that speaks volumes of someone who, and again, when you talk about this organization AEG and what they have their hands on, they're looking at the very comparison that we are discussing at this table of what has evolved through the notion of emotion and anger and rage coming to define the presence of alter ego, how that allows us to stretch beyond our limits. What's going to happen is, it's already happening, is there's going to be more discussion of that comparison of traditional sports play and esports play.
Right.
Because that's, again, That appears to be, back to your Wizard of Oz, that is their yellow brick road that they want to be on. And Oz is acceptance. Acceptance that we are like every other sport. Every other athlete trains the same way. There is no difference between reality and virtual. It's all the same.
And it puts the onus, you're talking about this first generation versus second generation. The first generation is going to be kind of left...
The guinea pigs.
They
already are.
Right, they're going to be just demolished.
With their pockets full, though.
Maybe. Short careers.
Yes, young lady, but that's not everything, you see, because that's analogous to help bridge this gap between traditional sports and esports. That's analogous to the $300 million contract that the Major League Baseball player gets. That's got gobs and gobs of money. I just saw last night a 30 for 30 on Mike Tyson. He was the world heavyweight champion at age 20. He was sculpted and defined at age 15 to be the next heavyweight champion. And he blew it all. He ended up in jail. He was accused and convicted of rape. He lost all of his money. He surrounded himself with Don King. He destroyed his reputation. He was incarcerated. His return to the boxing prize ring was an ultimate failure. And I'm looking at this video of Mike Tyson with this tattoo on his face, and he was one of the first to do that, crying, weeping, holding his traditional white towel, which a lot of people don't know. He cut a hole in that and he put it over his shoulders. That was his entrance ring gown, was he would just cut a white towel in a hole and drape it over his shoulders because he was that raw and bare bones.
Yeah. What's interesting about that is I hear what you're saying versus what I said, I enticed you. They are getting, similar to Mike Tyson, a lot of money really fast, and they're young. They're under 20. And what I think is interesting, at least the ones that I see that they revenue over $1 million a year that are close to me that I can talk to like this, they're smart. They've learned from those people, whether they were athletes, traditional, or their parents, generations, which is why I think this is interesting. This person in particular has 6 homes that he's investing in with apartment buildings and different stuff like that. Like, he's not just playing esports. He's learned from athletes that he grew up loving. Like Allen Iverson, I know a big story was he blew his money, but his lawyer knew he was going to do it and put money aside and said, you can't touch this until you're 40.
Right. And what he was saying earlier was that people, they don't necessarily always have that. I think there are definitely individuals who are being smart with their money.
Yeah, definitely.
But I think fame is a slippery slope. And when you kind of peak, we can see this in child actors. We can see people who reached the peak early. Like, you're definitely more likely to fall down into that slippery slope.
To find the dark side.
Yeah.
Right, absolutely. Right. Like when you hit 30 and you hit 40 and people aren't shouting your name and you're in front of hundreds of thousands of people, this is a thing that athletes go through. It doesn't matter if it's virtual or not. Like, athletes will go through this kind of depression that happens post-career or as you start to slip and hit to your back end of it. And you see that end coming in sight and you've used to having people cheering you and you being the lead or whatever that may be. We have to educate both the youth, we have to educate the players, we have to educate the athletes, and we have to educate the organization about what mental health is within esports and how to play, right, as you say, have a healthier way to play and what that looks like. Right? How do we engage in that moment and be more mindful of it as we go along as mindful athlete in the background?
Well, I think as we continue to peer inside the mind of the esports athlete, and we've tossed around this conversation of really what is mental fatigue, right? Is it the athlete's ability to relax and perform? Is it, if in fact, not if, but when they rage, they collapse? And I think that we've done a rather exhaustive, eloquent, amusing, of course, always entertaining, still smarting from that dunk. And I think we did a really good job of that today. So Dr. Lee Pick, Dr. Hunter Stevens, Jess Ferdinand. Do you want to be Jess or Jessica?
It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter, Ferdinand.
Just call me Ferdinand.
The head game thanks you, powered by Mindful Athlete Training. Thanks so much for watching.
Thanks.